Sonny Gems, I have seen the future, and the future is good. Yesterday, I finally got the chance to play Doom Eternal at E3 on the PC as God intended, and I can say that without a doubt, this game is fucking amazing. Now, I really wish that I could show the footage of the time I spent with it, but sadly, the capture wasn't allowed at the event, so you're going to have to put up with B-roll. But don't worry, because I'll still do my best to give my thoughts on why this thing is shaping up as good as it is. So obviously Doom Eternal is the follow-up to id Software's Doom 2016, and I think most people who got their hands on that would admit that it's a pretty damn good game. Doom 2016 put us into the armoured suit of the Slayer, a legendary evil battling warrior who was so fierce and that even the highest ranking demons in hell were scared to face him. Eternal doesn't really give that much info on how he managed to find his way out of the binds he would have been in at the end of Doom 2016, but again he's back, ripping and tearing, and you wouldn't really want it any other way. The demo that I got to play was the Phobos base that they originally revealed back at QuakeCon last year, and also the same demo they showed this year at E3. And everything they suit of the Slayer, a legendary evil battling warrior who was so fierce and that even the high highest rank 3, and everything they They showed in the demo is in the game, and it plays exactly how it looks, which is, awesome. Unlike a lot of other E3 presentations where you just kind of get this very scripted and almost preset style of footage, or 15 minutes of cinematics that have no gameplay whatsoever, everything they showed in Eternal is exactly what you're getting in the actual game. You'll be doing all that stuff, jumping from platform to platform, cutting demons up with a chainsaw and grappling into something's face with the shotgun to blow it apart at point blank range. It's all in there. In the demo, I got to use the shotgun, the heavy assault rifle, the plasma gun, rocket launcher, the ballista, and the chain gun, all of which have slight changes to their appearance and alternate fire modes. I think the plasma gun's probably my favourite change, as now it looks a lot like the version from the original game, and the pickups now look much more like their 1994 counterparts, so it's like this odd but appealing mix of the old and the new. The Slayer suits also had a few new upgrades, so now you've got a flamethrower on your back as well as a grenade launcher. You can dash in any direction and also grapple onto certain surfaces. And of course, there's also the return of the chainsaw. I mean, at this point, it wouldn't really be a Doom game without the chainsaw. There's also this new feature of this blood punch thing, where you charge up your melee attacks by glory killing enemies when they're glowing red, which makes your next attack become super powerful. But it's the mechanic I used the least, only because I kinda forgot it existed. Now, I've played this on both the PC and the Xbox, and I think the PC version feels way more fluid. On PC, the flamethrower is set to R by default, the chainsaw is C, melee and glory kills are E, and then the grenade launcher is the middle mouse button, which to me is kinda perfect. I've also heard certain people complaining about the user interface like it's too clunky or something, but I mean, honestly, I had no issue with it, and I assume they're going to have the option to modify it in the full game anyway, so it's not really a point to complain about. The option to modify too clunky or something, but I mean, honestly, I had no issue with it, and I assume they're going to have the option to modify it in the full game anyway, so it's not really a point to complain about. Eternal puts you into these little sort of combat arenas and puts you up against a bunch of enemies. But I found that unlike the 2016 game though, a lot of the time the enemies were already in the areas you entered. They still definitely spawned in on occasion, but a lot of the time the environments already had enemies walking around and infighting. So it does feel more traditional in that sense with actual enemy placements. I mean, I don't think I saw a single gore nest the entire time. Eternal's also a much more punishing game. A lot of the enemies now are just much more of a threat than they were before. Like a good example of this is the Mancubus, who can melt you pretty quickly with those cannons of his. The Arachnotron also deals damage super quickly now and can just turn your health bar into single digits. And some of the new demon types just move really quickly and can soak up a fair bit of damage. To kind of help you manage that, they've got the inclusion of this like skill shot system where you can disable certain parts of enemies. So you can shoot the cannons off the Mancubus arms, or shoot the gun off the top of an Arachnotron's head. This all kind of feeds into the life system. Now, this is a bit of a gutsy move for a game like Doom. I mean, it's like something straight out of an arcade game, giving the player multiple lives. And it's one of the new additions which I think might piss off some people. So how it works is that once you've found one of these one-up power-ups, you get an extra life. And then whenever you're killed, instead of restarting at a checkpoint, you can start right back up just with a bit of health given back. If you lose all of your lives though, that's when it's a full checkpoint restart. Now it might seem weird, but it does start to make sense when you realise how much more punishing the combat can be. Apparently when I was playing it, the game was on the medium difficulty, whatever that means, but even on that, enemies could give me a pretty serious walloping. I mean, if I wasn't an absolute alpha, I might have even died a couple of times. Now, I'm assuming they're going to change all of this around for the full release to hurt me plenty, ultra violence and all that, but if this is how the game is going to be on the so-called medium difficulty setting, well, I can't wait to play it on Nightmare. I mean, you'll almost be glad that you've got an extra life or two to give you a second wind. What's also kind of new too is that now the manner in which you kill enemies affects what they drop on their death. So if you kill enemies with the flamethrower, they drop armor. If you kill them with the chainsaw, you get ammo, and a glory kill of course gives you back health points. And I found that health and armor pickups were pretty low throughout the levels, like there'd maybe only be 1 or 2 medkits at a time. So you've almost got to farm the weaker demons for the resources you need, like that becomes pretty important. It's almost tactical to a point. You really need to preserve certain ammo types for the really tough demons. The behavior of certain weapons has also been modified a fair bit too, so like for the rocket launcher for instance, it's got a much slower fire rate and also the rockets themselves move a lot slower. However, they do a lot more damage, but also more damage to the player. In fact, at one point I think I honestly took off 80 health because of a single poorly aimed rocket. With the super shotgun, you've got that new grappling hook attachment, which, by the way, is pretty awesome. And it does seem that the super shotgun does more damage, but the reload time is way slower, which is trying to encourage players to get in as close as possible and do as much damage as possible. One of the new guns is the Ballista, which is very similar to the Gauss gun from 2016. And this thing fires out a super powerful shot or can be charged up to do even more damage after a short timer. And again, it's that balance of a weapon's damage output versus its limitations and disadvantages. Apparently too, they still plan to add in all of the weapon upgrades at some point too, so to facilitate faster reload times and hopefully, all that kind of stuff. Gotta say, I did find that movement speed felt slower than Doom 2016, but I think overall mobility still felt faster. Mostly because of the new dash move, which you can fire off twice before it has to reload. And of course the double jump and the ability to grab onto certain walls and climb up them. Now I don't remember Doom ever being a platformer, but it's really just another way of how the developers have really tried to evolve the formula and keep adding in new mechanics so it just doesn't feel like a rehash of past games. The best thing I can say about Doom Eternal is that it's just one of those games that really makes you feel like an absolute badass, and it's everything Doom 2016 did well and more. Actually getting to experience that scene in-game when the Slayer's walking through the Phobos space and making everyone shit their pants, through to him using the goddamn BFG to launch himself into space, like actually getting to experience that scene in-game when the Slayer's walking through the Phobos space and making everyone shit their pants, through to him using the goddamn BFG to launch himself into space, like it's amazing stuff.
3, 2, 1...
The visuals during some of those areas you get to play are just stunning. You're leaping from these rocky platforms to rocky platforms and floating in low gravity. And some of the new Mick Gordon tracks are just incredible. It's the kind of music that actually compels you to play better. You become the Slayer and the soundtrack's kind of like your cheering squad. There's few games that capture that tremendous feeling of being this lumbering, walking machine of death, and Eternal has just absolutely nailed that. I generally found that people who didn't like Doom 2016 were the kind of people who played it a certain way, like if they were just going to play it by using 1 or 2 weapons over and over, and not being mobile, well, yeah, it's not going to be that much fun. And it's going to be the same thing with Doom Eternal. If you just go in there and use your primary fire mode and everything, well, yeah, you're probably not going to like it that much. But what you put into Eternal is what you're going to get out of it. It's incredibly skill-based, and the better you play, the better the end result as the player is going to be. Complaining that the whole thing is boring because you're not using all of the tools at your disposal is like complaining that golf is slow because you're just using a putter, or saying that a piece of steak is too hard to cut because you're using a butter knife, even though the steak knife's right next to it. I've been pretty lucky to chat to a lot of people that work on the game recently, and the general vibe that I've gotten is that it's being worked on by a bunch of people who really love the game and they love what they're doing. And when you play it, you feel like you're playing a big budget indie game. And I don't mean that in a bad way, I mean in the sense that every aspect of it, from the gameplay through to the presentation, just has a real sense of being lovingly crafted. I'm not really too fussed about the multiplayer mode, to be honest. I mean, Doom has always been about the single player over the multiplayer, but I mean, at least it's there, and I am keen to check it out at some point in the future. I really hope I get to play this thing later down the track, but for now, I've been able to sleep peacefully knowing that Hugo, Marty, and the big dogs at id Software are doing exactly what they need to be doing to make Doom Eternal as amazing as it should be. Being sent to hell